session with a bit of key learnings in between. So I'd request you all to take note of those learnings or different understandings and realizations that come to you along the way, and we can discuss this in the end for knowing better takeaways from this class, right? So let's start with a small folklore from Ramayana. So one day there was a devotee of Lord Ram, in Ayodhya, where in India, Ayodhya is in India, where Ram's kingdom is. So he was chanting the names of Lord Ram's devotee, actually, of Hanuman, the greatest devotee of Lord Ram. So it happened to be Ram Navami and the birth date of Lord Ram. And this devotee was chanting constantly the names of Hanuman. So, Lord Ram was confused. He's from up there, he's looking down saying, this devotee is my devotee and it's my birthday today. Why is he chanting my devotee Hanuman's name? So he was a bit confused. So he appeared in front of this devotee and he said, why are you chanting the names of Hanuman? Today is my appearance day. You're my devotee and you're in my kingdom. Why are you chanting Hanuman's name? So to that, the devotee said, oh, I actually happen to regard Hanuman more than I regard you. So Ram was confused. What, really? I'm God. Like if you had to pick one between me and my servant Hanuman, who would you pick? So so then the devotee said, without a doubt, there's no question to it, I would have picked definitely Hanuman. So Lord Ram was very confused and he asked, why so? So the devotee said, actually, my Lord, you are like the lotus flower. Your qualities and your pastimes and everything are like the honey and honey within the lotus. But only the honeybee knows how to extract that honey out. And that honeybee is actually Hanuman. So we can all see the beauty of the lotus. We can all understand that the honey is in there, but we're not capable enough to understand your sweetness and your glories, let alone sharing it with others. So that is the greatness of Hanuman. So the personality who's written this Ramayana very beautifully and composed it, his name is Valmiki Muni, right? So we'll quote him quite a bit in this story. So Hanuman, he's just not a character in terms of a personality or a monkey in the story, but he's glorified very beautifully in Ramayana. So it is described that not just because he's a monkey, not that he's ugly, but his appearance is also very beautiful. So generally, a form of a monkey, people will think, okay, that's not very good looking, but that's not the case. Hanuman is very, very beautiful, and interestingly enough, Valmiki Muni, when he is writing the Ramayana, he's describing when Sita is meeting Lord Ram for the first time and they're uniting together to get married, right? So that was done by a Muni or a sage named Vishwamitra. And in that, Valmiki Muni is describing Vishwamitra to be Sundar or very beautiful. So from that, we can take that one person who unites Ram and Sita together is very beautiful. And that's what Hanuman did in all of Ramayana, right? So the word Hanuman, if we understand what does the word Hanuman in Sanskrit means, Hanuman means he who has a cracked chin, right? So if you see Hanuman's photo, he has a cracked chin over here. So there's a very interesting story behind that of how Hanuman, when he was young, he was a very naughty boy. And, he looked at the sun and he thought that was a mango. And he went and devoured the sun, as in he ate it. And then everybody got, angry, saying, how can this mischievous child, because he was Indra, he was Vayu's son. So he had all these superpowers. So he went and devoured the sun. And then so people thought that, okay, what a mischievous boy. So they cursed him, and Indra threw his thunderbolt and he got a cracked chin. So that's how he got the name Hanuman, right? So when he got a cracked chin, so when Indradev hit him with a thunderbolt, he fell down and he was unconscious. So his father got really angry, Vayudev. Vayudev is the person who provides life air to this universe. So he took away all the life air and everyone was like shivering and trembling. So they finally approached him and said, please, could you return back the life air from this universe? And then he said, only if you revive my son, then I will give back the life air from this universe. So they all gave different blessings and they revived Hanuman, and they said, oh, you will fly higher than the clouds. Another one said, oh, you will lift mountains, which is what Hanuman did later. And then Indra, interestingly enough, gave him the benediction that my thunderbolt will never ever affect you again. So one of Hanuman's other names is Vajranga. So Vajra means thunderbolt, and anga means body. So he whose body is never affected by thunderbolt. That's why we call Hanuman's name. Another name of Hanuman is Vajranga Bali or Bajrangi, right? You must have watched this movie Bajrangi Bhaijan. So Hanuman was the original Bajrangi who crossed over the ocean, who crossed over the border of India, right? So many wonderful pastimes of Hanuman we hear. So let's look at a small segment of this Sundara Kanda, where Hanuman is meeting Sita in Lanka, when he is asked to jump over the ocean to meet Sita and give her Lord Ram's ring. And then when he comes back and informs Lord Ram that Sita is very much alive, and there she is in Lanka. We should go and get her. So it is described that there are about in Ramayana there were about 60 billion monkeys, right? And all of them were competing that who will cross the ocean to meet Mother Sita, and everyone thought and pondered, and then people looked upon this very nice devotee of Lord Ram. His name was Jambavan. So Jambavan, not sure if you've heard of him, but Jambavan was a devotee of Ram in the body of a bear. So he was a bear actually. And he was very old and very wise. So everyone knew that it was Jambavan who had the strength to jump over the ocean. So they went and approached him, and Jambavan said, "Yes, actually, you're right. I do have the strength and I can jump over the ocean, but I won't be able to come back. My powers are limited. Like I'm very old and I'm very tired. So I can make one leap, but I won't be able to come back. So we have to find someone who has the energy to jump, fight if required, and even return back, right?" So he looked at Hanuman. And at this point, Hanuman was surprised because he was cursed by the sages because he was so naughty as a child that he would forget all the powers that the demigods gave him. So he was so mischievous as the child, he ate the sun. So there's this very famous poet, Sanskrit poet, who was once asked, "Can you describe 9 things, or rather 10 things, that start with the letter Ma, that are very mischievous or that are very unsteady?" So in his Sanskrit language he went on to say, "Ma mano madhupo mego, madhyapo markato marut, makshika matkuno matsyo makara dasha chanchala." So what that means is Ma means Lakshmi Devi, or the goddess of wealth. So Lakshmi is very chanchal. She is, one day we are rich, the other day we are not. Yet until some time back, it was Jeff Bezos who was the richest man, and now it's Elon Musk. So tomorrow it will be someone else. So Lakshmi, or wealth, is very unsteady. The next one is Mano, or the mind. Mind is always flickering. It's never steady in one place. So difficult to concentrate, right? When we say we're going to do yoga, our mind is running in 10 different directions. So next one is Madhupo, or honeybee. Honeybee is always buzzing around. It's never steady in one place. You'll never see honeybee just stopped at one place in the air. The next one is Mego, or cloud. Clouds again always move with the direction of the wind. They're always unsteady. Next one is Madhyapo. This is a nice one. Drunkard. A drunkard person on the street will never walk straight. He'll always, go here and there, right? Next one is Markato, or monkey. So Hanuman was a monkey. Next one is Marut, or wind. Then Makshika, which is a housefly, like how we say Maki. The housefly never stays in one position. Next one is Matkuno, or bedbug, right? Last two, Matsyo, fish. Fish is never again just steady in one place. It's always moving around. And so that was the last one. So Makara, these words that start with the syllable Ma, Dasha Chanchala. The 10 words are very chanchal. So very interesting, this Sanskrit poet is described. So as a child, Hanuman used to trouble all the yogis, and they cursed him. And, they said that you'll forget all your powers. So Jambavan remembered that this is the same Hanuman who actually possesses all these powers. And Jambavan knew. He looked at Hanuman, and Hanuman himself was surprised because he didn't remember. But Jambavan said, "You don't remember this, but this is the right time, because the sages had blessed you also, that when time comes right, and when you grow up older, and when you're mature enough to understand how to use these powers, that's when these powers will come back in you," right? So Jambavan knew this is the time where you have to serve Lord Ram. So this is why I will give you back these powers. So Jambavan invoked these powers back in Hanuman, right? So there's a very interesting lesson that we learn up until this point of the story. Uh, Mind you, Hanuman has still not made that jump. So, what's the lesson that we learn from this, right? Many a times we find people around us who are so super talented, they've got something, some ability, right? We somehow, in us, within our hearts, we tend to become insecure, right? We think that, oh, how can they become better than me? Especially if it's someone who's doing something very similar to what we do. Let's assume I'm a very good singer, right? I've created my audience and my niche and my style, and I have many followers on Instagram or whatever. And if another person who is also a great singer, especially who has come from nothing to become very famous, and everyone is flocking around that person. So there will be, like, I won't say anything, I wouldn't, nobody is doing any harm to me or telling me anything or criticizing me, but somehow there is something happening in my heart. There's insecurity, there's instability in consciousness, right? So when we are seeing others progress in life so well with their wonderful abilities, we often get envious. Okay, so Jambavan's example teaches us a very important lesson here, right? If we analyze, Jambavan is never glorified as the hero of Ramayana. In fact, many of us haven't even heard of this person named Jambavan, right? Actually, after Hanuman, who's everybody knows, right? Hanuman, there's pujas done, there's fasting done on Tuesdays, and people do all different kinds of things for Hanuman, right? So, actually speaking, when Hanuman jumped over the ocean, found Mother Sita, and helped Ram win this battle, nobody even knows or cares about, uh, you know, Jambavan. So just imagine if somebody who was a nobody, in this case it was Hanuman, became a hero after our inspiration, right? If somebody was a nobody, we found them on the street, and now they're doing much better than us in life, right? We What would we do? We would actually go around and say, oh yeah, like, this guy, he was actually a nobody, but after he met me, good fortune arose in him, and I'm the one who gave him such a nice understanding and everything. So he was a zero, and then I made him a hero. So there will be some envy within us, right? So I am the reason. So people would say, I am the reason. He was a zero. I am actually the one who was added before him to make him the 10. So actually, in this way, we try our best in subtle ways to glorify ourselves. So, but in this case, Jambavan, he knew that he was nothing, but he just considered himself to be a small segment of the chain. And he knew that his job was just to be there at the right place at the right time. And he was only doing service to Lord Ram. And that's exactly what he did. He was convinced that he was that small section. And if he invoked these powers in Hanuman, every good things would happen. And he knew very well that there is no glory for him here. He was convinced. So, he knew that when he joins hand with Hanuman, who also actually Hanuman thought of himself as a nobody. He thought of himself as an insignificant servant in this case. So that chain of an insignificant servant, the servant who considers himself insignificant, with another servant who considers himself insignificant, is enough to reunite Ram and Sita. So this is what Jambavan is teaching us in this example, to be like salt, just by adding little taste but remaining invisible. That's so wonderful. So Valmiki, the author of Ramayana, is describing that Jambavan inspired Hanuman, and then Hanuman was, between the inspiration, and he took a few steps back. And here, there's one another thing that Hanuman teaches us is the ability to hear that inspiration. Many a times we may think, actually, Hanuman could have said, oh yeah, my father is the greatest, my father is this, my father is that. You don't know who I am, you old man, who are you to teach me, right? But Hanuman, at his humility, he understood and he accepted it, right? So Hanuman took a few steps back. Now it's story time. So he's taking a few steps back. This is at the border of Rameshwaram, which is at the tip of India. He's taking a few steps back, and he has to cross over the ocean to arrive at Lanka, right? So Valmiki is going to describe this section of Ramayana that Hanuman was ready to take that leap of faith, and he took a few steps back, and poof, he took off in the air. And because he took off with such a great force, so Mother Earth was started trembling, and Hanuman took off. And Valmiki here is describing what's going on in Hanuman's mind. Very interesting. So he was saying when Hanuman was in mid-air, he thought for a second that, oh, what if I can't make it? And then what if I lose all these powers? I mean, I've been empowered, but what if I don't have enough stamina to cross and reach Lanka? So for a split second, the thought came to his mind, thinking that, yeah, it's okay. I have my father. He is Vayudev. He is the life heir of the whole universe. If I get tired, he'll just carry me and take me over there. But as soon as that thought comes in his mind, Hanuman immediately disregards it, and he says, "No, no, 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 no. That's not right." And he tells himself, "What am I thinking? Jambavan has invoked these powers in me. He's inspired me to take this jump, and Lord Ram himself has blessed me. So why am I doubting myself doing this? I'm just an instrument. This name of Lord Ram that I'm chanting is enough to take one away from this whole material world and transcend it to the spiritual world. So what to talk about this whole material ocean can be transcended with the name of Lord Ram. So what is this small ocean that's separating India from Lanka?" So with that thought, he got even more power, and he jumped across with that faith of Lord Ram's name, and he was chanting Lord Ram's name. So there is a section in Srimad Bhagavatam, one of our scriptures, where there is again another elephant. That's again another interesting story. But he was a devotee of the Lord, and he says in the eighth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam how the devotees of the Lord. He says, "Ekantino yasyana kanchanartham." Ekantina, the devotees of the Lord know nothing else but them. Right? Just as the mother, she doesn't care about other children around. They know the mother doesn't know or any other child except her own. She thinks, "Oh, my child is the best in the world." So similarly, the devotees or the servants of the Lord, they know nothing else but the Lord. They're thinking ekantina, only in that direction, right? So Gayanta Ananda Samudra Magna, they're singing and chanting and immersing themselves in the pleasure of the names of the Lord and taking bliss in that, right? So in this way, Hanuman was thinking this, and he took that leap of faith. And we've all heard this story where Hanuman finds different obstacles along the way. We won't get into that with the interest of time. But long story short, Hanuman now arrives in Lanka, and there he's mesmerized. It looks so beautiful, and it's called Ashok Bhatika, the wonderful golden palace of Ravan. He looks around there and he finds a small tulsi plant, and he's very attracted to that small tulsi plant at a distance, and he realizes, and he's seeing this person is worshipping tulsi plant, and he's chanting Ram's name within Lanka. So he's surprised. Later on we find out that that's obviously Vibhishan, who was the brother of Ravan, who is a devotee of Lord Ram. And so it's a very interesting point that we can see here also. Being in Lanka, we can see that Vibhishan was worshipping and chanting the names of Ram. Whereas Kaikai, who was in Ayodhya, who was the stepmother of Ram, because of the association of Mantara, her consciousness became so polluted that staying in Ayodhya, she was living in the consciousness of Lanka. Whereas this person here staying in Lanka is staying in the consciousness of Ayodhya, or the kingdom of Lord Ram. So oftentimes we complain, oh, the I don't have enough association, the environment is not favorable enough, the mood is not devotional, we want the lights off, we want this, that to set the mood. But the lesson here is being that, if we are not sincere enough, even a place like Ayodhya, we can make it a place like Dubai, right? But if we are sincere in our endeavors, in our bhakti, in our practice of devotional service, then a place like Dubai also we can change it and convert it into Ayodhya, right? So Hanuman is going around, and finally he sees Mother Sita at a distance, right? And Sita, at this point, she's sitting beneath a tree, and she's hanging a cloth on the branch of the tree, and she's ready to give up her life, in separation of her husband and the Lord. And she was, preparing to give up her life. So Sita at this point hasn't seen Hanuman, but Hanuman sees, and he spotted that that's Mother Sita. And at this point, what should Hanuman do? So Hanuman is not just Sundar by looks; he's also very Sundar in terms of intelligence. He's very beautiful. His thought process, his words, everything that he does is so pure. So he's very, very intelligent. So what does he do? Rather than jumping right in front of Mother Sita, because Mother Sita has once been cheated. It was Ravan who disguised himself, and he came as a Brahmana, and he made her cross the line of Lakshman Rekha, and he abducted her and took her away. So she's been cheated once by the eye. So what Hanuman did, instead of jumping right in front of her, he climbs on top of the tree, right? And he's looking at her below, where she's like so depressed and she's crying and she doesn't know what to do. right? So there's a saying in Hindi. I'm not sure if all of you will understand, but there's a saying in Hindi. It's called "Doodh ka jala chhaj bhi phuk phuk kar pita hai." It means that if I've been burnt once with milk, hot milk, even if someone gives me a buttermilk in a cup, I'll still think, oh, it's white. Maybe it's like something that will. So like I'll start blowing all the, trying to make it at room temperature. So Sita Devi was same because once bitten, twice shy. She was cheated once by the eye, but she's never been cheated by the ears. So Hanuman is very, very intelligent this way. So he climbs on top of the tree, and from there he starts chanting the glories of Ramayana. Right? He says, "Pujantam Rama Rameti Maduram Maduraksharam Aruhya Kavita Shakham Vande Valmiki Kokilam." So Hanuman is singing in this way all the glories of Ram, and Sita is like, it's almost like life air came back in her, right? So, and he's very intelligent, so he knows her emotions. He's very sensitive to her emotions. So he's thinking of each and every move of his. So Hanuman was chanting Ramayan, the shlokas of Ramayan in this way from the top of the tree, and he was describing how Lord Ram is so powerful and he's so great and he's so beautiful, and how just one Ram is enough to destroy this whole place and save Mother Sita. So she was very much looking forward to who is this person who's chanting all of this. So she was finally, she folded her hands and she said, "Oh Ramaduta, whoever you are, please come in front of me." So Hanuman, right now, he jumped from the top of the branch of the tree and he came and he offered his respects. And so Sita is like, "Who are you?" She asked him. So, very interestingly enough, Hanuman responds and he says, "I'm the most insignificant servant of Rama's army." Now, somebody could say, okay, Hanuman is lying. He's actually the most powerful, which is why they even chose him in the first place to jump over the ocean. So, why did Hanuman say this? It's very interesting if we analyze it. So, Valmiki is giving two reasons as to why Hanuman said something like this. First is genuinely he thought of himself as insignificant, he's humble. And secondly, he thought to himself, if Sita understands that I am the most insignificant and I am the most weakest of the whole army, then she can understand how strong the army is. If he says, "Oh, I'm the strongest," then Mother Sita can't really she can't really draw the understanding for how strong the army can be. But if he says he's the weakest and yet he's able to cross over the ocean and come and meet her, so she can understand, oh, Ram is ready with his army to come and get me, right? So finally, after all this, Mother Sita asks him, "So how is my Ram doing?" And so what should Hanuman say at this point? He can't say that, "Oh yeah, he is the Lord of all lords, he's always blissful and he's eternally blissful and he's ever happy." He can't say that. And he can't even say, "Oh, he's so depressed, he's crying all night, all day, and he can't sleep in your thoughts." He can't even say any of that. So what does he say? It's very interesting. So he hands her the ring of Lord Ram, and he says that this is Ram's finger ring, and in separation from you, this finger ring, now he's able to wear it in his wrist. So he's become so weak in your thoughts. So very interestingly, he describes. So of course, here Sita is also teaching us a lesson, so that sometimes, often at times, we know things that we're too attached to. Like in this case, it was a deer. In that case, where Sita was so attached to that one deer she spotted far away, and she sent her husband away. She sent the Lord away. So sometimes it's a very interesting teaching. Of course, Sita is trying to teach us this lesson here through this story, uh, that just by that split second of attachment, of this material attachment, that we feel that this is good for me, although deep down we know that this is something that's going to drag us away from our spiritual life, something that's going to drag us away, and it's not beneficial for us. But just in the spur of the moment, we think that, oh, this is good for me, right? So let me pursue it. This will give me pleasure, right? So Mother Sita is teaching us here that if we pick a deer over our Lord or over someone we love, however dear it may be, right, to us, it's going to take us away from the Lord. So this is exactly what happened here. So Sita was looking at that ring and she was crying and she was remembering what happened to her when she was abducted. All those thoughts refreshed back, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to cut this story here, and for the next 15 minutes go into Sita's mind and understand what she's thinking about at this point in time, looking at the ring that Hanuman has handed to her, right? So she's remembering the story of when she was kidnapped. So let's try and understand what's happening in her mind. So we'll come back to the story of Hanuman and Sita Devi in about 10 or 15 minutes, but let's get to that. So in again the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's described the story of Ramayana. So the story of Ramayana, when Ram and Sita were in the forest, Sita was very attracted to the deer, golden deer, and she was insistent that I want this deer. So of course she sent Ram away, and Ram was nowhere to be found. So she was really insecure, what's happening to my husband. So she sent Lakshman away also. And Lakshman, although he didn't want to go, she still forced him, saying, what irresponsible brother you are. I'll be safe, it's okay, but please go take care of him. So because she sent Ram and Lakshman away, now she was alone. And this is at this point is where Ravan came disguised as a Brahmin, and he abducted her. So this is what she's thinking about at this point, right? So so the entire Ramayana kicks off, and the Acharyas very beautifully explain this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which described to say that when Ram and Lakshman went away, leaving Sita behind, it is described how Ravan came here. So at this point, Ravan comes, and she's remembering this, how she's alone, and she sent away Ram and Lakshman, and Ravan comes, and he's disguised, and and you could see it in his eyes that usually Brahmin, when they come to your house, uh, in the traditional Vedic culture, we should give them water and offer them some prasad or food or fruits, and offer them water, offer them a place to sit, and that's how they're respected, because their only purpose is to go around and preach the message of God. So it's our also duty to serve them, because they're giving us this knowledge of God in return. So, Ravan came disguised as a Brahmin, and Sita was very chaste, and she went and got him a pot of water. And she said that, my dear Brahmana, I cannot come out, but I please request you take this water, and you can wash your own feet and please relax and rest. Right? So she was shy and she was looking down, but Ravana was so lusty. You could see it in his eyes. He was constantly staring at her. And Sita at this point started feeling a little awkward. There's something seeming off. Not just that, he started flattering her. Oh, how beautiful you are. Oh, look at your eyes. Oh, look at your beautiful face and your figure. And he started describing her. No saintly person would do that. So she started to understand there's something fishy and something wrong. There is a saying in Sanskrit which goes to say, Vachanam Sheela Makhyati, which means that a person, however well dressed they are, when they start talking, you actually come to know their personality or who they really are, right? So this is what happened at this point. So as soon as they open their mouth, you understand their character. So Sita was feeling a little out of place. Ravan was thinking maybe through his poetic ability or through his awesome words, he can impress her and take her away. But she started distancing herself a bit more. And, she knows that a glance of a saintly person or sadhu and the words of a sadhu are not what I read, and what I've heard is not what I'm seeing. So there's something really off. So Ravan didn't stop here. When this didn't work, he started glorifying himself now. That maybe he thought this will work. He started telling her how powerful he is and how he's built an entire city of gold. And, at this point, Sita was like definite that this person is not who he's seeming to be. And at this point, Ravan understood that Sita is deeply convinced that, she's so in depth in her character, she's so chaste that she will not break and give in to him. So at this point, because he was disguised as a Brahmin, he finally said, oh, my dear Devi, I'm very thirsty and I'm very tired, and I'd like to have some more water, please. Right? I'll sit down here itself, a little far away, and I please desire that you bring me some water. So saying this, he stepped back from the Lakshman Rekha. And Sita, being very innocent, she went inside and she got more water. And Ravana called her. He said, please come here. So at this point, Sita Devi said, she was a bit reluctant. And then Ravan, with the power of his words, he said, I'm sorry to say, but, when you don't serve an Atithi or a guest, there'll be no good in your family or your father or your father-in-law's house whatsoever. In fact, by serving a Brahmana, whoever has done that, they've progressed a lot in life. And on the contrary, those who haven't served Brahmanas, anything and everything happens in their life is bad. So therefore, please, oh auspicious lady, I request you, please break that boundary. And breaking the boundary and serving a sadhu is a true sign of devotion. So he started convincing her with her words at this point in time. So Mother Sita, she felt like she was so obliged that she had to cross over this boundary, right? And she was tricked this way mysteriously by this evil Ravan. So, and by this time, she already came to know that as soon as she crossed the line, she's like, she knew it deep down that it's too late now. So mysteriously, obviously, Ravana from nowhere, he manifested a chariot, and it was a golden chariot, and it's described that the charioteer was present, and the chariot was driven by 20 ferocious, ugly-looking donkeys, right? So generally, chariots are driven by horses in traditional times, even in today, sometimes when we go to India. But Ravana was different in everything. He was unique in his own style. So, and Ravana himself, he transformed himself into this ugly looking, with 10 heads and 20 arms. He was filled with weapons and bows and arrows, swords and shield. And in his quiver, he had all different types of weapons. He was very well equipped for a fight if he had to, right? So it's been described that he started, he took Mother Sita by her hand and he started dragging her away, mercilessly. And she couldn't even revolt because she had only 2 hands and he had 20 hands, right? So he was holding her with one hand and he was laughing really loudly because he was so ferocious and he was much more stronger physically than her. So listening to this, even the animals got so scared, who's this ugly monster? And they started trembling and shaking. And it's described here by Valmiki that all the snakes who were roaming around the forest, they went back into the holes again. The rabbits who came out of the holes, they dug back another hole and they went inside the soil, and they were like so fearful of this personality. And at that time, Sita is crying for help, and Ravana's dragged her and put her on the chariot, and they started moving up towards in the sky. And here she's trying to hold of everything that she could, all the branches of the trees along the way, all the fruits and flowers and everything that she's worn is now to the ground. And Ravana's grabbing her, and she's forcibly trying to, bring her towards himself. And she's crying and weeping and trying to ask for help, but nobody's seeming to even be in sight. So she's actually shouting as the chariot is moving up. She's saying, "Oh, residents of the forest, oh, please, witnesses in the sky, oh, aquatics in the water, please help me." And nobody's answering here. And at this point, she's saying, "I know no one can fight this Ravan, but everyone, please promise me one thing as I'm being dragged away mercilessly, that anyone who sees my husband, Lord Ram, please tell him that I was dragged away in the middle of this forest in the southern direction." So nobody is saying a word at this point. Everyone, there's a pin drop silence. And at a distance, Mother Sita is trying to look for help. And here she spots another person or another creature. So this creature is Jatayu. Jatayu is very old, and Jatayu has been the king of this forest. Jatayu was a vulture, actually. So he's been the king of this forest where they're staying, which is named Dandakaranya, for over 10,000 years. So Jatayu is the king of all animals, all the species, everything put together. He's the most strongest. But at this point, he's become very weak, right? He's more powerful than all the creatures combined. But because he's old, he has his wing wrapped around, and he's just sitting there, he was chanting the names of Ram. And he was sitting on top of the branch. And as the chariot was moving up, Sita could see him, right? And she saw Jatayu and she remembered, this is that same Jatayu. And this was the same Jatayu who Ram made friends with. Jatayu and Ram were the long-standing friends, because Jatayu, even before Ram, was the friend of Ram's father, Dasharath. And she remembered that he had met Ram in Panchavati forest, and there Ram had embraced him and they made friendship together. So she remembered that this is that same bird, Jatayu, right? So Sita Devi could recognize that that's Jatayu, and she started screaming, "Jatayu!" Right? She screamed, and Jatayu from a distance, he opened his eyes, and there he could see the mother Sita. She was weeping, right? So she looked at Jatayu and she said, "Jatayu, please do me a favor. Don't fight. I know you're so old, and I know you want to fight. You're old and weak. You fought more than 10,000 battles in your life, but you can't take this one. But please just do me one favor. that when Ram comes back, and Lakshmana comes back, please tell them that their Sita cried and she wept and she was gasping for breath while remembering them, right? So Jatayu was looking very gravely at Sita, and he looked at Sita, and then he looked at Ravana. He took a long, deep breath, and then he thought to himself, I am just one battle close to serving Lord Ram, and this is my only chance. So he looked at Ravana and he spoke, Oh Ravana, it is said that whoever comes here into your house, you should serve them as it because they're Atiti. Atiti Devo Bhava, they're as good as God. So, and they should give them respect and food and even gift when they leave. So, therefore, oh Ravana, I'm giving you a gift. You've come into my forest, you're my Aditi. I will give you a gift. I challenge you to a battle. So the condition of the battle, he mentioned, that both of us will fight and the battle ends when one of us falls down to the ground dead. So Ravana is laughing, at this point. He's like, this stupid bird, what does he think of himself? He's a vulture and he's so old and he's challenging me. Ravana was very young and he had so much energy and he started laughing ferociously. So Jatayu is speaking like this. Sita Devi is lamenting and she's nodding her head saying, no, Jatayu, I don't want you to fight. Please don't do this. Just hold back and survive and just tell Ram that I was taken in the southern direction, please. So at this point, Jatayu is just thinking to himself that it's not good to kill someone just like that. Let's give this demon another chance. Jatayu is thinking otherwise. So he speaks to Ravan and he says, Oh Ravan, don't you know that stealing another man's wife is not bravery, it's an act of cowardice. You're a coward. You're like a dog who steals the fruits away from when the brahmanas are away from the yagya. So why would you take this away? Do it the ethical way. Why don't you fight Ram? And if you win, you can take Sita. Of course, he'll never let Sita into the hands of this demon. But then he tells Raman, you're a jackal who's taking the deer away when the lion is gone. Do you know what happens when the lion comes back? The lion will rip you apart into pieces. But you don't have to go that far, Raman. So Jatayu is saying like that. I am the servant of Ram is enough to take you and drag you back to the lotus feet of Ram. So at this point, Ravan's bewildered. He's like, how dare this bird is speaking like this to me? How much courage does this guy have? So he's looking towards Ravan and he tells him, look, Ravana, I know I'm old, Jatayu is saying, and you're young. You have so much strength and I'm so tired. I don't have any weapons. I've just got my beak, I've got my claws, and I've got just 2 wings. You have so many weapons. I've just got 2 wings. You've got 20 hands. I've just one small bird face and you've got 10 heads. You have a chariot, you have a charioteer, you have 20 strong and powerful donkeys leading this chariot, and you have a shield and bows and arrows and whatnot. So I don't have any of this. But guess what, Ravana? I don't need any of this to rip you into pieces. So at this point, Ravan's blood is boiling. Without a second thought, Ravan, he took out arrows from his quiver and multiple arrows he started shooting towards in the direction of Jatayu. And for Jatayu, he just flapped his wing once and poof, all the arrows went away. So thousands and thousands of and as soon as Jatayu did that, thousands and thousands of arrows again started coming towards Jatayu's direction. Again, he flapped his other wing and all the arrows went away. So before he sees that, again 10,000 arrows coming towards his direction. So all he has to do is flap his wing and all the arrows from his quiver. And it's not even that the arrows are done. All of them are mystically appearing back in his quiver. And he's stringing them like into force and with full swing, pulling them to his ears and attacking Jatayu in that way. So all the arrows are coming towards Jatayu's way, and Valmiki is very beautifully describing it's almost like a cloud of arrows are trying to cover the sun-like face of Jatayu. And for Jatayu is emerging victorious just by flapping his wings. So at this point, Ravan couldn't he couldn't understand what's happening. He couldn't contemplate. So Jatayu is like at this point, because Ravan's so confused, he jumps and he rips all those donkeys apart with his claws. So all the donkeys, because now there is no donkeys anymore. At this point, the chariot started shaking and the charioteer didn't know what to do. So Jatayu jumped onto the charioteer's head and he ripped his head apart also. So, of course, it's a very brutal story of what happened. But at this point, so there's no charioteer, there are no donkeys to ride the chariot. So at this point, the chariot started wobbling, and Jatayu with his claws and his beak, after killing all the donkeys and he jumps onto the arms of Ravan, and he starts ripping those arms apart. And his claws are so powerful. And just like a snake, when he comes out of the hole, Ravan's hands mystically appear back. And at this point, Ravan is so angry and ferocious that he pulls out his sword and starts attacking Jatayu, right? And so there's blood oozing all over the place, and it looks like it's a shower of blood from the sky. So Ravana gets so furious, and Jatayu is fighting back, and he rips the chariot into pieces. At this point, Ravan doesn't have a chariot, he doesn't have a charioteer, and he doesn't have anyone to ride the chariot. So he killed all the donkeys, he killed the charioteer, and he destroyed the chariot now also. So Ravan didn't have anything more left in his hand except a bow. So Jatayu jumped onto the bow and he ripped those bow also into pieces. But magically again, the bow appeared back, and so Jatayu is pouncing on the back of Ravan at this point, because Ravan couldn't see where he's coming from, and he started, tearing flesh and different pieces of flesh from Ravan's back, and it was such a gory scene. And at this point, Ravan is trying to find where Jatayu is, and he's crying in pain, right? And what he does is he just takes out his sword and he starts to attack Jatayu at the back. And at this point, Jatayu is gone. So Ravan was thinking, yes, that old vulture, that rascal bird, have killed him. So there was blood all over the place, and Ravan couldn't see properly. And there was Jatayu back again, trying to, he again jumped on to Ravan and started tearing his hands apart. And again, Ravan's hands are coming back. So this went on for quite some time. So there was blood oozing all over the place. And Ravan started attacking Jatayu, and Jatayu was attacking back. And at this point, Ravan could see that Jatayu is losing his energy, right? So Ravan, and this point, he was so merciless, right? So he took his sword, and he could see that Jatayu he was panting, he was losing breath, he was trying to keep up, keep up with him, keep up with Ravana, who was mysteriously just appearing, his hands back, his bow back, and trying to fight back, and holding Sita with one hand very tight, close to him, right? So it was getting next to impossible. And Jatayu realized that, because every time he was trying to kill him, but magically his skin would reappear back, his arms would reappear back, his bow would reappear back. And so it was getting so difficult. And at this point, Ravan could understand, and you see that this bird is tired, and he was trying to flap his wings and stay up in the sky, but he could no longer fight. He was breathing very heavily. And then, but he was trying so hard, because he was seeing Jatayu was seeing Sita, and she was crying and weeping, and there Ravan was trying to fight him. So again, when he would see Sita's tears, again he would get energy back and try to fight. And looking at that desperate, helpless condition of Sita, the Jatayu would again get revitalized and put in all his energy. So as Jatayu was flapping his wings in the air and he was getting tired, so Ravana saw this and mercilessly took out his sword and he chopped his wings off. So at this point, Ravana's hands were again and again coming back, but Jatayu, he had only two wings, and if they were cut, so at this point, Jatayu had only one wing. He was trying to flap his other wing. So Ravana mercilessly cut his other wing off, and then he cut his claws off. So at this point, Jatayu is swirling in the air, and he's landing, and Ravana is holding Sita, and he was laughing at that bird. And he said, "Look at that bird. At last, finally, I've killed this bird. What did he think of himself?" And looking down from the sky, Sita was seeing Jatayu's body swirl around and fall to the ground finally. And she was started weeping, and her tears from top started falling on Jatayu's body. And that was the last offering as a mother, that with her tears, she on Jatayu's body. So she saw that her last array of hope, the last thread of hope that she saw, was falling from the sky, and it fell down, and she started weeping as Ravana dragged her, and they started flying off in the southern direction. So they flew off, right? And it's described, Valmiki is describing here, that her tears flowing down from her cheeks were like the pearl necklace coming down from her eyes. It was so beautiful. Finally, now Jatayu is down to the ground, and Ravana has disappeared, and all the birds started, and all the animals came, and they were weeping, seeing the loss of Jatayu. And his body was so disfigured and dislocated that nobody could understand that this was Jatayu, right? So So, of course, when Jatayu was fallen to the ground, and as he was seeing Ravana go away in the southern direction, and he said, he still had his words. So he said, "Oh Ravana, you can kill me, but don't worry, I will keep my body and soul intact until Ram doesn't come back here. And when he comes back here, I will tell him it was you who dragged away his wife mercilessly and took her in that direction. Only once I give that message, I will breathe my last. That is my promise to you." Right? And then he told Sita also. He said, "Oh mother, please don't worry. Your tears are only temporary. They will reunite you back with Lord Ram. This is my promise to you. And this is the final offering as a son that I can give you." Right? So Ravan starts laughing and he just disappears in thin air. So all the birds started circumambulating the body of Jatayu as he was breathing his last. Right? So Ravana drags away and he vanishes. So finally, Ram and Lakshman, they realized that they were tricked, and they came back to the original place where their house was, and they saw broken fruits and flowers, all the beautiful earrings that Sita used to wear with the flowers and everything scattered on the floor and smashed. And they obviously could understand, that something's wrong. And all the deers and everyone started coming and, touching them and saying, they started running in one direction towards the south. So they obviously understood there's something that's happened. And Ram said, "Oh, where's my Sita?" He was so devastated. But the deers were touching Lakshman and Ram again, saying, "Come, follow us." So they started following these animals, and finally they arrived um, to the place where there was blood all over the place, and there was Jatayu's body, right? So they didn't know, or Ram didn't know that this is Jatayu. So Ram like immediately took his bow and his arrow and he strung it to kill this bird. He's like, "Look at this rascal bird. It was this bird who killed my Sita and he ate her, and now he's just lying on the sun, beneath the sun, just trying to digest. I'm going to kill this bird," right? So his body, Jatayu's body was so disfigured and so badly injured that even Ram couldn't recognize that this was Jatayu, right? So, and so Ram started telling, "This dirty, ugly bird has eaten my Sita alive." And then that's when Jatayu started speaking, and he said, "Hey Ram, oh Shri Ram, I'm the same one who befriended you and your father Dasharatha. I'm the same one who you met me in Panchavati. I'm the same one who's been living in this forest for 10,000 years, right? As the king amongst all the other species of Dandakaranya. I'm the lowest of all your servants. I'm Jatayu." So at this point, Ram, when he hears that, he immediately puts down his bow and arrow, and he couldn't take it, and he started taking Jatayu in his hands, and he said, "What happened? Please tell me what happened, dear Jatayu. Why are you in this condition?" So Jatayu says, "Oh my lord, that ugly-looking demon Rakshas Ravan, who's the ruler of Lanka, he took away Mother Sita, and they flew away in the southern direction. I'm really sorry, my lord. I tried my best. I destroyed his chariot. I killed all the donkeys. I even killed the charioteer and I broke his chariot. I destroyed his bows and I destroyed all his arrows. But still, I couldn't save Mother Sita. Please, please forgive me for this greatest offense. The greatest offense that I've committed is that I'm alive. And in my being alive, I saw Mother Sita being dragged away, and that I'm the biggest offender. So please forgive me. The least I could do is die for you, and I couldn't even do that because I'm still alive." So, that is the glory of the servants of Lord Ram. They're ready to be killed. So, Srimad Bhagavatam here is describing a very nice verse. It says, "Tiraskrita vipralabdha, shapta kshipta hata api." Tiraskrita, the devotees or the servants of the Lord, whether they're tiraskrita, they're defamed, or vipralabdha, they're kept away and they're distinguished, or they're cheated, or kshapta, they're cursed, or kshipta, they're neglected, hata api, even if they're killed, right? So when someone asked Lord Krishna, what is the speciality of your devotees? Why do you love them so much? That's when he said this verse, and he said, "Tiraskrita vipralabdha." So he said, "Nastya tat kati kurvanti tad bhakta prabhovipi." That my devotees are so dear to me that they're ready to die for me, which is why I love them so much. Their unconditional love towards me is me selling myself onto them, right? They're ready to do all of this. So as Jatayu is speaking this, Ram is embracing him and on his lap, Jatayu, and Ram is weeping and he says, "Jatayu, I'm so unfortunate. I lost my father, I lost my wife, and now I even am losing such a great friend like you. that I'm so misfortunate that even if I jump into the fire and give up my life, somehow it'll get extinguished and I'll still be alive. I'm so unfortunate. So he's embracing Jatayu and he says, oh my dear Jatayu, how can I fulfill, what is that last wish of yours? How can I fulfill this wish of yours? So Jatayu is smiling at this point and he says, my lord, please give me the benediction that next time Ravan comes to kidnap Mother Sita, I can successfully die, right? So while being alive like this, I'm neither alive nor am I dead. I would rather give up my life in service to you, right? So I should be alive. When I'm alive, I should see Sita and Ram together. But when they're not together, I should rather give up my life. So please promise me, my Lord, as I'm breathing my last, with your name on my tongue, that with your beautiful lotus moon-like face, with you embracing my body, I will breathe my last by chanting your name, right? So in this way, keeping his eyes glued to Ram's face and his body wrapped around Ram, and Jatayu gave up his life. So all the birds and animals, even the trees started crying at this point in time. And Lord Ram was weeping at this loss. So he told Lakshmana to make the most royal funeral, right? And he personally cremated the body of Jatayu while chanting the mantras from the Vedas that one son chants for a father. He chanted those mantras, right? So what is the lesson that we learn from this, right? What is Jatayu trying to teach us here? I'll just take maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Is that okay, Sanjana?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the lesson that we learn from here, that Jatayu is teaching us, right? So the devotees of the Lord or the servants of the Lord, they're ready to sacrifice anything and everything that it takes for the service of the Lord. And the second lesson that we learn from the story is that to serve the Lord, your background, your caste, your body, none of this matters. It's not that one can only become a devotee or one should only do the service or one should only worship God by some, if you're some Brahmana or if you're some this thing. Hanuman was a monkey, Jambavan was a bear, Jatayu was a vulture. And even when they were building the bridge towards Lanka, there were squirrels who were helping collect pebbles and making the bridge, right? So Ramayana is very beautiful that way, and it teaches us that if we want to serve Ram or God, we can do that. Even animals can do that. What to speak of us as human beings, right? So Ram does, like, he performed that final rites for Jatayu, and the principle that we can learn from this story of Jatayu is that if we live for the Lord while being alive, He will be present for us when we are dying, right? So it's so beautiful, the story of Jatayu. Finally, I'll just take 2 minutes coming back to the story when Mother Sita is looking at this ring and she's remembering all of this that happened. So she's looking at the ring, and Hanuman hands her the ring, and he goes back, and of course we know the story of how he sets the fire to Lanka, and now even when his tail is burning, he was thinking how I can serve Ram. So he used that tail on fire to burn all of Lanka, and then he comes back. So finally, Hanuman takes that leap again, and he comes back to Rameshwaram, where Ram was eagerly waiting for him, and he gives him the good news, and he embraced him, and then he said, oh, Ram was so happy and pleased. He said, oh Hanuman, how can I fulfill your desire? I'm indebted to you. So Hanuman says, I'm not doing this for any benediction actually in return. If there's anything you want to give me, please promise me that every lifetime after lifetime I will be a monkey, and lifetime after lifetime you will tell me to jump the ocean, right? So such are the glories of the servants of and such is the master of all servants. So how ironic is it that the master of all servants actually only thinks oneself to be the servant of all the other servants, right? So the last learning that I'll tell here is that when we hear about such personalities, that if a monkey can call out, if a bear can call out, why can't I call out the names of the Lord? That is so interesting. And when we hear about these personalities, we get purified to say that how wonderful their glories are. So when we discuss their stories, we become purified. So and when we discuss the stories of the servants of the Lord becomes even more pleased, right? So this way, thank you very much. Actually, I know I said it would be 45 minutes, but I went a bit over time. But thank you so much for dedicating your time to listen to the glories of the servants of Ram. And if I can ask you guys to unmute yourself, probably give any learnings or takeaways, something that you've learned new I won't call out names or anyone, but if you'd like to share some learnings from today, that would be uh, relishable for everybody. Thank you all very much.
Feel free to unmute yourself, or you can put it in the chat box.
I think what I learned is in the beginning of the lesson, you spoke about how Sita was reflecting on how just because in the minute she wanted the deer, and then she had to like endure all of the suffering. And I mean, taking it back to like present, like to my daily life, sometimes it is tempting to get into like our in the minute desires, but without thinking of the long term consequences. But that kind of made me realize that there's long term consequence for everything.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Yes, if I may say a few words.
Of course.
I'm Shobha and I'm rejoining this group after a while. And this last year has been a bit of a tough year for me because I lost my only brother. And, what brings us back to semblance of normalcy is that faith. I'm sorry. Yes, so the way you put it across today, Rahul, the very small episode of this great Ramayana, and it touches the chord so deeply. I just want to say thank you to the group. I want to hear more of this. It gives a whole sense of peace and balance, which is what everyone is looking for, I guess. But to me, it is very significant. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we pray that obviously this year is much better for all of us. And we pray for the departed soul. And we pray that they also get joined back in the service towards the Lord hand in hand. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank
Anybody
you.
else?
Also, if I can add a few words. Hi, Rahul. Hi, everyone. I'm a new joinee, actually. Pooja here.
Hi, Pooja.
Uh, yes, hello. Sorry, I'm outside right now, but I just tried to attend. And I've been mentioning this to everyone if I can attend the session in person. I really want to know what exactly you guys do. Like my friends mentioned about you, and I attended the session today as well. But it's a bit weird. Like I am just bumping in between. So I just want to know how exactly this works and how is it. So to a new joiner, if you can give me a brief introduction, how is this? If you have some time now, or else, how do I join?
Sanjana, I guess this one's for you.
Yeah. Pooja, as mentioned earlier, Ria will get in touch with you. I think she's in touch with you, so we'll take that up after this call.
Okay, no worries, fine. The session was amazing. I listened and it was amazing. Thank you so much.
Okay. Does anyone else want to say anything?
Stay. This is Poonam.
Poonam, yes.
Yes, Poonam.
Close to about 8 months that I've been trying to, something that has been burning within me as to what it means to be a devotee. Um, it's been a constant question for any number of years, but the last 8 months have uh, made me absolutely. It's been burning within me incessantly, and in fact, the last 21 days, I was involved in very intense bhakti sadhana, and yet I couldn't get anywhere close to the answer until this moment happened. Uh, it was such a journey, and I'm leaving with absolutely profound answers, and I can't be more grateful for this. So, it'll definitely be a journey from here. Um, what it means to be a devotee, what is expected, instead of expecting from who we are devoted to, we need to service the expectations of being a devotee to be able to uh, be in the eyes of uh, the Lord or the energy, whatever we may refer them to. So thank you for such profound answers, and uh, yeah, it'll be something that I look forward to practicing a little more. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing, Poonam. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, that was a brilliant session. Thank you so much, Rahul. Thank you everyone for staying with us and giving us your comments and feedback and really opening your hearts in this session. I think it was such a powerful one, Rahul. Honestly, the way you took us through the entire story was so profound, and it was better than watching a Netflix, show for sure. It was really, really powerful to a point where Pawan was asking, like, hey, the time is up. Did you tell Rahul? It's like, I don't even think I want him to stop, let him go on. So it was really, really powerful. Thank you very much once again. And we look forward to many more classes from you, Rahul, because I think, everyone really loved the class today. So thank you. I think Ria had a question, which is Ria, do you want to ask your question?
I think I wanted to ask this question for all of us because I'm sure everybody must be wondering, where do we get all of these details, these precise details, as to how Sita Ma was crying or, everything that you explained. And it was, Rahul, I want to say it was so, I was imagining the entire situation in my head. So every time that you were talking, I had scenes playing. So it was explained so beautifully. And I'm sure everybody would want to know where is all of this written, or how do we know these exact details of what actually took place in Ramayana?
Great. Thank you for the question. I will actually share with Pawan, who can share it with the wider group, for the book Ramayan. It's available for what to read. Actually, the entire Ramayan itself is 24,000 shlokas. So I don't think, that will take a lot of time to read, but the specific, the nutshell of Ramayan, which describes about what happened episode after episode, I'll ask Pawan to share it with the rest of the group. Is that okay?
Perfect. Yes. Thank you. Thank you
Great.
so much, Rahul.
And Sanjana, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank
I'm sorry, I must have overspoken or must have said things people didn't understand, maybe, or um, sorry for any mistakes that I committed. But thank you so much for having me. It was my honor, and I look forward to seeing you guys in person.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Rahul, once again. And thank you, Ria, for the coordination, Pawan, for the. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you maybe next week or 2 weeks from now. We'll keep you all posted either on WhatsApp or our Instagram, or you can keep in touch with Ria. And we'll see you soon. Thank you again. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, guys.